tricky. So I found those, and I want to kind of go through a couple of them with you too while we wait for everybody to join. And then if by the time we're done talking about them, nobody else is here, we'll just carry on with our grammar talk. All right, let me see if I can show my screen here. It has been a wild and crazy week. I can hardly believe we're back together. Felt like last week was a blur. So, alrighty. I was looking, I'm going to make like I tend to do, I'm going to make this full screen, and I will lose my ability to see you. So Darcy, we'll have to rely on you to turn on your microphone and holler if something goes wrong and you like can't see me anymore or something like that.
Okay.
So, because unfortunately, if you chat or anything, when I put the presentation like this, I can't see it. All right, so phrases.org.uk is a neat little website. As you can see by those last two letters, it is from Britain, so some of the phrases that are presented on this website aren't common here, but a lot of them are. It's called the Idiom Attic, which sounds so British in that pun. But it's a cool little website, and this was one of the idiomatic phrases that was presented under the category criminal. So he is a diamond in the rough. He's a diamond in the rough. You might hear this, you know, in the juvenile court setting. I could imagine it being used like, Your Honor, yes, this minor child has gotten into some trouble with weed and gangs, but I truly believe he's a diamond in the rough and we just need to take a chance on him. Tell me, Maritza, in the chat, if you can, have you heard this one before? Probably so. There you are. Oh, it is a good one. All right. So a diamond in the rough means basically what? If you had to put it in other words, Maritza, you can type it in. Or
No. I got something crunch on my head and it was red.
Somebody joining us from Darcy then. That's good.
Want to bring it in here? You can. Just close the door. Are you okay?
Basically, a diamond in the rough means that somebody's unpolished, right? It's not necessarily an idiom that goes back to 16th century England or anything like that. It's just a metaphor for actual diamond mining. When you find a stone that hasn't been all polished up, you can't really tell how valuable or beautiful it can be. And that's what this phrase makes reference to. This could show up on the exam. And the way that it would be in a phrase like this, I think in the usage section, and you'd see a phrase like this and then you'd have to choose an alternate. All right. Another one that I liked from the criminal section of this particular website was in cahoots with. The doctor was in cahoots with, for example, I made this up, the pharmacist to supply opiates to area addicts. In cahoots with, you can chime in on your microphone or type it into the chat for us. What does that mean? Have you heard it before? What does it mean?
Kelly, are you only asking Maritza or are you asking anyone?
Anybody.
Anyone, okay.
Raquel, she types. So your explanation, Darcy, would be?
Well, it's funny. It was on one of my consecutive practices. And
really?
So I interpreted it into estaba en conspiración con el fármaco, lo que sea. Estaba como, he's in cahoots with, like, it's a bad dealing, it's a shady dealing. And so it has a negative connotation.
Yes.
And they're conspiring together. So it's
right.
Conspirando con el fármaco para,
Right, exactly. Or working together to keep the register neutral, if, you know, just to give a summary, like Raquel would, or if you want to keep that kind of negative connotation that we have in cahoots with, then conspirándose con would be a good way to go about it. for the purposes of the written exam, you're just going to see these in one language, and then you're going to see an explanation in the same exam. Okay. On the oral exam, when you get to that phase at the state level and at the federal level, your test, there are about 5% of the scoring units that you are scored on in the entire exam are made up of idiomatic phrases, and they could be, you know, old-fashioned, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree kind of proverb type sayings, or they can be just more idiomatic, just phrases that if you translated each word literally into the other language, you would come up with something that makes no sense. So you need to be able to comprehend them for the purposes of both the written and the oral exam, and then on the oral exam, render the meaning. If you can find an equivalent idiom, that is ideal, and if an equivalent idiom does not exist, then you render the meaning, and you're tested on whether or not you're too literal, or if you get that meaning in your rendition. So, okay, the last one, this is an example of what I mean when I say it's not necessarily a proverb or a saying, but it's kind of a phrase that's figurative. The literal meaning does not apply here. So if you heard the phrasing, you know, among courtroom workers, Judge Walker is hard on people who drive under the influence, but he's no saint. Let me tell you, no saint is an idiomatic type phrase. And basically, if you had to sum that up in English, what does it mean?
Well, he's not perfect himself. I mean, so he's kind of, you know, he's hard on others, but the inference is that he's no saint himself. So he's not totally pure himself.
Right, exactly. And that will make your listener understand, okay, well, you know, maybe even in this particular context, oh, is he a drinker also? Has he, you know, drank and drive before in the past? That sort of thing. So he's no saint is sort of a facetious way of saying he's kind of throwing stones where maybe he shouldn't. And Maritza, you have an idiomatic equivalent, which is pretty great in Spanish. So I'm going to read it out loud so it's on the record on our recording, and it's one that would be good for all of us to write down. But Maritza suggests, tiene cola que le pisen. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like saying he's a bit hypocritical in this particular area, or he also commits these types of transgressions, I think. So thank you for that suggestion. All right. Well, there are 4 of us here. I know that a couple of us are on vacation. I know one of us was running late. So I'm just going to go ahead and start going. As always, I'm recording this session. I just want to double check. Yep, I did record all that. Oh, good. So I'll get that posted. Let's start going through some grammatical information in both of our languages. All right. So for those who were working specifically only on English, because our book was shorter and more concise, you're pretty much at the end of it. Spanish grammar people, there was a large group of us who really could use the in-depth review of the entire Orange book we've been working from. So we're taking 2 months to do it. So now we're roughly halfway through. So that's amazing. Let's go through the English. Now, for those of you who are finishing up the English book, part of what you do at the end is do some TOEFL practice tests. So what I want to suggest for you, if you fall in this category, is to follow this procedure when you get to those grammar tests. We're going to work through a couple questions right now and identify some of the concepts and talk about them. But basically what I want you to do is take the quiz, and each time you select an answer, it'll tell you correct or incorrect, and it'll tell you why, most of the time. So you'll have some type of name of a grammatical concept to work with. And in the absence of that, what I want you to do is like jot down the question or take a screenshot of the question. That would probably be the fastest. Get it to me and say, this is a question that I missed, but I don't understand what grammar concept they're asking me about here. Because of that conciseness of our blue grammar book of punctuation, the benefit of that book is all the quizzes that are out there and available, and especially the commonly confused words and some of the prepositions that they teach and everything. But there are some nuances on this TOEFL practice test that aren't in the book, so we might as well learn them. So identify the concept, research that grammatical concept, or ask me for some guidance regarding it. Turn that into a flashcard or some kind of note page that you can study later and review that information, and then come back to these exams and concentrate specifically on whatever those concepts were. So that's the basic way to get the biggest bang for your buck, if you will, now that we're talking about idioms. When it comes to those TOEFL exams. All right, so now on this screen, you guys should see, I'm trying to make it big. Oops, I think I might have lost it. Can you see it, or did it get lost on your screen? You can see it?
Oh. I wish they had something like this for Spanish.
Oh, Darcy, you and me. Oh my gosh. In fact, once you guys are federally certified, if you want to turn what we're doing into something like this, I would be so excited to send my people to you. What they have here are basically 4 exams, and they have it, what do you call it? They have it programmed so that the order of the questions is randomized. So, and some of each one may have more than 20, I don't know, like a couple of questions that cycle through you don't see every time. But on some of them you have to fill in the blank, on some of them you have to identify the error. So if any of you are savvy this way and want to create this, I would love to use it. Let me tell you. So here we have this phrase that you see. The decanting of red wines, blank, a long tradition in high quality wine service, and can be done to add a special flourish at a meal. The concept at work here is a good one to master, especially if English is your second language. But the structure of the question isn't like what you're going to see on the exam. You would either see an incorrect choice, and other ones underlined and have to choose the error. That's basically what would be there. Or you would see like it is incorrect, and you would see alternate options. Those are the 2 types of grammar questions you'll see on the test. So what should go here? All right.
My guess is.
Any other guesses? I can't see. Oh, maybe I can. Oh no, I can't see the chat. Okay, so that was my guess too. But actually,
you know what? I didn't read it correctly. I was overly confident. I was like, oh, it's easy. The decanting of red wines has a long tradition in high quality wine service.
Correct.
I just didn't read that correctly.
And so I'm glad you did that, Darcy, because that is something that we are very prone to on tests like this, especially going into a section that we kind of feel like we're good at. So use that to inform yourself on test day. Okay, I'm going to use my time wisely, but I'm also going to read the test through. Okay, so part of what's going on here is something called a collocation. So a collocation is a set of words in a language that often go together, meaning if you were to run a statistical analysis on a newspaper article or this specific word, it would appear next to this other specific word more often than you would predict statistically. I know that sounds all like academic and sciencey, but basically what they're trying to say with collocation is that it's a phrase that just for some reason or another matches in whichever language you're working in, and has a long tradition is one of those. The other thing that we're looking at is, and I hope I can find I was going to say I hope I can find the tab, but actually it's my own presentation. The other thing we're working with in that particular question is a little bit of this notion of using the word has in English, which can be very different from how it's used in many other languages. And then that can sometimes be contrasted with the use of there is or there are. So if that is a concept that sometimes confuses you, there it is. Basically, keep in mind this notion. So have is used to signal possession, something owning something else. There is or there are is used to signal existence. There, in this sentence, the phrase there is or there are is really just a subject. It's sort of an audible, like, neutral subject. It's a strange construct, a little bit like the do in the do you have a book kind of question. It's a word that is hard to define what it's doing there, but it's a subject holder, and it's just indicating that there is something out there that exists. All right, so to see how you would express possession in these contexts, you can look at the sentences that I invented. So the decanting, or the TOEFL exam invented in this case, the decanting of red wines has a long tradition in high quality wine service. The way that this is written means that there is couldn't work here because we're signaling tradition. Red wine decanting owns this long tradition in this world of wine service. This is a strange context, but that's why I like these particular TOEFL exams, because on top of quizzing you on rather obscure and difficult English grammar concepts, they also use odd vocabulary. So it's a good chance for you to try to tease out what a sentence means, even when you haven't necessarily heard all the different words together. So the decanting of red wines owns this tradition, is what they're basically trying to possess. Contrast this with the same notion expressed as existence. So there is a long tradition of decanting of red wines in high quality wine service. Here the emphasis is on the fact that the tradition exists. Above, it's on the possession of that tradition. Okay, another example, the healthcare system in Ohio has a record of excellence in patient service. They own that record of excellence, right? To put the emphasis on the fact that that record exists would be to use there is or there are, and you would express it like in the following manner. In Ohio's healthcare system, there is a record of excellence in patient service. So we don't know necessarily who owns that record, but the record is out there. Finally, this is something that I learned today in a random hearing that they added on my schedule at the very end. Nebraska's probate code has a provision that precludes a party from objecting if they are not present at a hearing. So if you have some say in a probate action in Nebraska, but you can't be there because, for example, you were deported, your attorney can't represent your interests. You have to figure out how to get there because it's not the court's fault that you were deported. I'm digressing. That seems kind of random to me. But anyway, we could express that idea with the verb to have in this manner. We have a provision in our code. If we just wanted to emphasize that this exists, we could say in the Nebraska probate code, there is a provision, but the code necessarily doesn't necessarily possess it. This is a nuance that is difficult to master. And so I would, if this is something that is challenging for you, my challenge for you would be to tune into it, hone into it, listen to how native speakers unconsciously express these two ideas, take note. And if you're embarrassed to ask those particular native speakers, wait, what did you just say? And why did you say it that way? And why isn't this way? You can come to me and present the context, and I'd be happy to get to the bottom of it with you. So that's what concept we were discussing here in this particular portion of the TOEFL. Okay, so next. Temperature can affect the sound of a musical instrument in a variety of ways, blank, different for each instrument. which one would we put here? You can chime in on your microphone or type it.
I would say which are different for each instrument.
Mm-hmm. Yep, me too. All right. The funny thing here is that there is an error, but it wasn't one that it wasn't one that we could have picked on. But hey, whatever. Right. So this is the an application of that, which, those parts of speech. So if you struggle with that, there is an explanation in your blue book. If you got that one right, awesome. I think it's likely that this type of question on that particular part of speech would show up. All right, men dying sooner than women, something biologically. Because 105 males are born for every 100 females, it would assure that there are about the same number of men and women at reproductive ages. So, on this one, what will we say here? Maritza says makes sense. Maritza, I know you have to type your response to me. Did you go by what sounds right? Was there some kind of cue to you here? It sounds right. I agree. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what concept they're testing us on here, other than just general fluency. So this is why reading and, is such a big deal, because sometimes the concepts are so obscure that you're basing your answer on what you know of the language. Okay? Computers crash blank in the operating system software, or errors in the computer hardware. Software errors are probably more common, but hardware errors can be devastating and harder to diagnose. Okay. All right.
Because of errors, yeah.
Because of errors. And if this said due to the errors, it would be the same. I looked up both of those, and those are prepositional phrases. So if this was challenging, what that means is you got to study your prepositions, which is something worth pulling your hair out over, because that's really one of the hardest things to master in another language, period. We are tested on our knowledge of prepositions on this exam, so it's good to study. And hopefully that sounded right to you. That would be an indicator of your fluency. But in the absence of that, study your prepositions. As a pedestrian, you may assume that you have blank vehicles, but city drivers are oblivious to that quaint notion. So,
the right of way over vehicles.
The right of way over vehicles. So that is almost a vocabulary unit. Mm-hmm. That's almost, I think, an idiomatic phrase kind of a situation that you might find yourself tested on the exam. That's just a very specific phrase to traffic contexts. All right, here we go with some that are a little bit more like what we have to deal with on the exam. So, scientists have uncovered evidence for an innate satisfaction in human beings giving people their comeuppance. Where is the error? There is not a correct version right here. And that's what happens. That's why I love these questions, because that's what happens on the exam. You're not always faced with the chance to compare a right version and a wrong version in the error detection part. So you kind of have to go with, okay, where is the breakdown happening?
I'd say giving.
Because what sounds right, Darcy?
It's a weird sentence. Scientists have uncovered evidence for an innate satisfaction in human beings. In human beings, which give people, or I don't know, that giving does not sound right to me.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
I don't know how to explain it, though.
They're trying to say that, I think what they want the sentence to say is that we discovered that human beings like giving people their comeuppance. So we have to figure out how to fit that in with, there's innate satisfaction for giving people their comeuppance, according to these authors. I almost would say in giving people their comeuppance, but that could be a regional variant. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a gerund. That's the grammatical concept here. So if it's challenging, that's one thing you could read up on, gerunds and how they work in English. All right? More fill in the blanks. I'm going to skip this one to see if we can, I don't know. There we go. There we go. Okay, here we go. Since 2001, the company's annual revenue from ticket sales and contributions grown by 85%. Where is the error?
Grown. It should be grew.
Grew by 85%. Yes. Or we could also say has grown. We could make this into the present perfect. So this is what grown is called a participle, a past participle in English. So if this was weird to you, that's what you want to read up on. And those need to be accompanied by some verb form. So if you want to leave grown in, you're going to have has to make it the present perfect. All right? All right. I don't know if there's another one. So anyway, that's how those tests work. And that's how to get the most of them, is to go through, note where things are falling apart, figure out what the concept is and do a little bit of research on it, and then come back to them. I know it's tedious, but the type of detail that they're asking you to pay attention to here and in the Blue Book is really reflective of the type of detail you'll have to pay attention to in the English portion of the exam. All right. So let's see here. I think there was, on one of the versions of that exam I took, there was some question that required you to choose between their products and these products. So these products is a demonstrative adjective. Those are used to indicate where something is, where it's located. These products right here, as opposed to those products over there. Possessive adjectives, as the name suggests, are used to indicate who those nouns belong to. So if you find yourself struggling with these, those, theirs, his, hers, mine, yours, those types of words, you need to review demonstrative and possessive adjectives. And here is a YouTube video you can watch. It's very short, and and then it'll lead you to down a rabbit hole of other types of explanations, but it's a good one. Priscilla still has issues with laid and lane and it and at and on. So in, at, on, those are prepositions, and a lot of what you've got to do for prepositions is old-fashioned flashcards. Figure out they're just phrases that just happen to match. Like, for example, in Spanish, we have them too, just as much as we do in English. Like insistir just matches en. Ellos insisten en ir a la tienda. You just plain old have to memorize that type of thing. Laid and lane is an issue for me as well. It was never something that was clearly used in the region where I grew up. So I'll remember that for the next time we get together. Who versus that is in the Blue Book, and thank you for letting me know. I'll find some more exercises on those parts of speech. Because basically they exist to link to two different clauses in a sentence, but there are kind of rules that really tend to dictate which one sounds the best. Present perfect was what we were just talking about with the grown and all that, has grown. So this is a link that will take you there. I'll post this presentation like I have in the past on our Facebook page, and you can follow these links from inside the presentation. And then collocations, let me see if, yes, I do have one of those. Oh, I just started. So how to learn collocations is to be aware of them and recognize them. So start to tune your ear to certain phrases that you hear present themselves together always. You can you can notice them as you work on reading comprehension. Just read, or reading for pleasure. That's really how those are communicated in the language, is just through use. People pick them up and then reproduce them themselves. This website has certain types, so you can learn collocations that are adverbs and adjectives, completely satisfied rather than downright satisfied. It's almost easier to recognize a collocation when you hear the wrong way. So you wouldn't say excruciating joy, you would say excruciating pain, right? You wouldn't say a rush of anger, you'd say a surge of anger. Those are two nouns that match. They just match because that's how we say it. Lions roar, so that's a noun and a verb. They don't shout. You commit suicide, you don't do suicide or undertake suicide. It's just commit. That's just how the phrase works. Burst into tears, that's an expression with a preposition, and those are particularly challenging because you burst into, you don't burst in tears, for example, or blow up in tears. And you wave frantically, that's a verb and an adverb, not wave feverishly. So you can kind of classify them that if you find that helps you. But consider looking some of those up and just turning them into old-fashioned flashcards that you can use. So, all right, that's our English portion for tonight. And keep checking in with me on these concepts, especially stuff that you need clarification on, and we'll get things figured out. Okay, so the Spanish grammar, I need to get the calendar updated for you guys. Right now, all that it says, now that we've made it to day 30, is just the exercise. I don't think I've referred you back to the readings, so I need to go back through and get all of that updated. My plan is to do that before the week is out, so keep an eye on things. We're at different points in the book. That's completely normal. Just keep trying to go through things at your pace, keeping as close to the calendar as possible, and reminding yourself you're a lot further into this book than you would be if you didn't have a group supporting you each week, because it's just one of those books this one's little, but even still, there's a lot of information in it. So any work that you do with it is helping you for your exam date. So spend your energy on focusing on what you're able to do and not worrying too much about what's falling through the cracks, if anything is. I see a message here. Let me make sure. Ooh, Priscilla, no, we haven't talked about that quiz. We can talk about that at the end here, or we can text about it. Did anybody else take that I posted on the Facebook page?
Oh, about the lawyers?
Uh-huh.
Yes, I did take it.
How did it go?
And I'm embarrassed to, I did not get 100%. I did make some mistakes. It was very difficult.
Was it? Cool.
Well, yeah. And so it was kind of embarrassing for me since I'm a lawyer and I'm a native English speaker. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm kind of pathetic here, but
no.
It was tough.
Is that kind of the general consensus, Priscilla? Is that how you felt? Like, what?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's because I got many wrong, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know if I didn't learn the concepts right or what, because I did get many wrong on that quiz.
What if I go through it? I'll go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and we'll talk about it next week. Would that be okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I don't even remember where I found it. And I just thought, I'm sure if attorneys are messing this up, then it's got to be pretty hard. So, and if it's pretty hard, then there's a chance that it's going to show up on the test. So, yeah, we'll take a look at it. Maritza, was that your experience as well? Like, whoop. You can type your, yeah, good. Then that means it's challenging. So I'll take a look. And again, I will, sometimes when I am lost in the corners of the internet, I find pages written by attorneys in Latin America. I'll see if I can find like a mi abogado favorito puntos gramaticales or something like that. And we can see what makes attorneys in Spanish-speaking countries have fits as well. So, okay. One portion of what we looked at for the Spanish grammar portion of our work were C clauses. These are something that I can feel confident saying will show up in some way, shape, or form. When I don't know, Raquel, if you remember this, but I remember it clearly in Arizona, Joshua Elliott saying, this is something, it's on the oral exam and it's on the written exam. And part of the reasoning behind it is that I think the Spanish language regionally, this is almost like a laid lane, something that native speakers of Spanish just live their lives never really nailing down and communicate just fine. So it really separates the native Spanish speakers who have learned academic grammar from those who haven't, which is part of the aim of the exam, right or wrong. So it's a good construction to really try to nail down and wrap your head around. And I think it's seen in the exercises 13 point whatever in our exercise book. So one of those required us to find errors in some sentences that were proposed. The first one is, si decíamos siempre lo que pensábamos, se producirían cantidad de conflictos. All right? Si decíamos siempre lo que pensábamos, se producirían cantidad de conflictos. And this is an example. It may sound right, so it's hard to nail down if it is right in this kind of a context. So, where's the error if there is one?
Si decíamos.
That's the error, exactly. What should it be, Priscilla?
Si dijéramos.
Si dijéramos siempre lo que pensábamos, se producirían cantidad de conflictos. Exactly. So this is the imperfect indicative. This is the imperfect subjunctive. In these types of contexts where we're speaking theoretically, where in English we could say, if we were to, blah, 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 blah. In Spanish, to nail down the construction that your exam raters are looking for, you must use the imperfect subjunctive. Another thing that's important to remember is that the imperfect subjunctive goes next to the si. It does not go in the second half of the sentence. Lots of times, like you may hear native speakers say this, si decíamos siempre lo que pensábamos, se producirían cantidad de conflictos. You may also hear native speakers say, si dijéramos siempre lo que pensábamos, se producieran cantidad de conflictos. Maybe not in this particular sentence, but sometimes there's an overcorrection and imperfect subjunctive is used both. I think that's often with the si hubiera ido, hubiéramos visto, instead of si hubiera ido, habría visto. And that might be something for another day. But anyway, in this type of context, imperfect subjunctive goes by the si. Okay? Here's another si clause, another if, right? However, it's in present tense. Let's see if we can find an error. Yo no cuento algo si no me lo crea yo mismo. Si no, ¿quién se lo va a creer? Yo no cuento algo si no me lo crea yo mismo. Si no, ¿quién se lo va a creer? All right, guesses as to where the error is in this si clause.
I would say,
okay, I hear crea.
Yeah, the no me lo crea just does not sound right to me. Si no me lo crea.
Okay, good. Let's keep going with that, Darcy. What do you think this exercise writer is trying to express? Put what you think this means into English for me.
I don't say something. if I don't believe it myself? If I did, who is going to believe it? So yo no cuento algo si no lo creo yo mismo, sino quien va a creerlo.
Good, good. In this particular construct, the se lo and me lo is correct. What's incorrect is the crea. So, but the way you said it is also correct. It was just a rephrasing of it. Okay? But the only incorrect thing was this. This is present subjunctive, but all that's required is present indicative. All right? I'm going to get to the why behind each of these in a second. All right? But you're right. This is what the writer is trying to say. If I don't believe something myself, I don't go around saying it, because if I don't believe it, who else will? This is the idea behind this phrase. Okay? Okay, so we'll get back to that in a second. Now, last one. Él sabía perfectamente que si nevaba más aquella noche, se quedaría aislado. Él sabía perfectamente que si nevaba más aquella noche, se quedaría aislado.
Nevara en vez de nevada, porque si nevara, ¿sí? Subjunctive.
Any other thoughts?
Uh-oh.
I'll get to why on this one.
Maybe se hubiera quedado instead of se quedaría.
Yeah, se quedaría sounds bad.
Right, it's kind of a funny one.
Se quedó aislado, se quedara aislado? I don't know.
According to the authors of the book, there is no error in this one. Dun, dun, dun. Okay? The reason why is basically going back to the essential function of the subjunctive and the meaning behind it. So there are lots of situations, and this is why subjunctive is so difficult, especially for those of us who have learned Spanish. You can use both the subjunctive and the indicative in a given sentence based on what you're trying to say. So it's important to remember that the indicative is for things that exist, right? Things that happen, there's no question, no doubt around them. It just is. And the subjunctive is reserved for that murky world where maybe it could have happened or maybe it didn't happen, right? So in this case, si dijéramos siempre lo que pensábamos, we have to say dijéramos because we're talking in theory, all right? In this case, it's okay to say si nevaba más because we're not talking about anything in theory. Like he's saying, I'm stuck here if it snows. It's just a very tiny nuance of meaning. And this is probably the context surrounding this particular utterance is probably something very black and white, like in the blizzard of 1942, my grandpa set out across the Black Forest to get back to his hometown in time, even though there was a blizzard, because he knew perfectly well that if it snowed anymore, he'd be stuck there. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was overthinking it. I think that's the problem with these. It's like you want to find an error, and yeah.
We're predisposed to finding an error. So the only way around that is to really try to pick apart the different concepts that you're being quizzed on, like we were doing with the TOEFL a little bit, and then just applying what you know. And so if you were to have chosen, él sabía perfectamente que si nevara más aquella noche se quedaría aislado, you know, you're applying what you know. I think what makes the indicative necessary here is because we have the he knew it. But it's a tiny nuance. And it's the same thing going on here. She's not saying, if I were to ever be in this hypothetical situation where maybe I was tempted to say something that I didn't quite believe, this is what I would do, right? No, this person is saying, when this happens to me, definitively, I do not do this. So this is a more black and white expression, not the strange kind of murky, confusing world. Okay? So what's the answer? How do I do this on the exam? How am I going to know?
This one in particular, are we talking?
Well, just subjunctive in general.
Oh.
Are you automatically going to make everything with a seat in front of it, like totally for sure subjunctive? No, because there are those off situations and we know they're probing how well we know, okay? Anytime I see a seat on the error detection portion in Spanish, am I going to ask myself, hey, wait a second, does this need subjunctive? Yes. Okay, so use the C clause as a red flag. Okay, this could be a thing, but analyze, is this concrete, or are we talking word to maybe kind of murky situation? And remember weirdo, which is that acronym we learned. Wishes, oh my gosh, no,
emotions.
Yes, emotions. Emotions, impersonal expressions.
What are impersonal expressions?
Those are the expressions that elicit subjunctive. So, like, es bueno que vaya. Es importante que comas. Es urgente que lean. Es horrible que digan. You know, that kind of thing.
Yes. Okay. And then R is.
What's R? I swear I looked at these right before I put this slide up, and then I was like, okay, I remember. I'll look for you.
I'll think of it too. I wrote it down.
D is doubts. So dudo que.
What was I? I'm sorry.
I is impersonal expressions. So those are expressions that start with es, and then any kind of verb or word behind that would elicit the subjunctive. Es importante que, es urgente que, es necesario que, es horrible que, es triste que. All of those. In English, they'd equate to it. It's blank, 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 that kind of a phrase. Oh my gosh, what is weirdo? What's the R? And then O is ojalá. Ojalá, which is like emotions. I hope, and emotions are things like me alegra que.
R is requests.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. Pido que vayas.
Sí.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay. So that's the only way to deal with this on the exam. Know that you may be presented with one of those gray situations where it's not obvious. And know that you're not going to fall apart on the rest of the exam because you couldn't quite remember if it should be si nevara or si nevaba. All right? And you're going to do your best to kind of identify what the test writers are getting at with the question, make your best answer, and then just move on. Because sometimes when it comes to this, we put so much work, so many months. We get one question like, should it be an el or should it be a la here? I can't remember. I read this exact example in my book back in March, and I can't remember. And we just get so discouraged that the whole thing goes down the toilet after that. Remember to keep pushing forward. There will be things you forget on the exam. You're not required to be perfect. All right? The chances that you will remember enough things on the exam to reach the threshold are greatly increased by the work you're doing now. And that's where you have to put your energy, especially on the day of the exam. I've prepared what I can. They're going to throw stuff at me that I don't know for sure, but I'm just going to deal with it and keep moving on. All right? All right. Last week, we hit upon an exercise that I thought was very worthwhile, and that's where I just found stuff that was written in Spanish, and I changed some things to find errors and underlined them, just like the type of thing you'll see on the exam. I liked doing that because in last week's exercise, the vocab was real challenging. It was an excerpt from the legal code in Mexico. So it's helping you with your comprehension and error detection at the same time. So I came up with a couple more of those. Your links to these exercises, the sources for the material are linked in the slide presentation that I'll put on Facebook. And I really recommend this particular little newspaper. I have it on the screen right now. This is the region that I visit where my husband's family lives when we go, and they just have a little local state newspaper, and there's a police section, and I love it. I love it so much because it reads a lot like police reports. Sometimes they go in the weeds, like one of these that I pulled from today, so I didn't stick with it, but put this in your bookmarks if you're at all challenged. This is a good way to improve reading comprehension, improve vocabulary in Spanish in our particular context, and it will also help with sight translation down the line because these really read just like little police reports that are published right there for you in the newspaper, sometimes with odd commentary that makes you think, what? You know, I guess that's just a bonus. So anyway, here is the first one from the article I cited on the screen prior to this one. Okay. Relajada se observa la seguridad en Chetumal y los delincuentes aprovechan a asaltar a punta de pistola una estética ubicada en los alrededores de la Plaza Comercial Las Américas a las 5 de la tarde, sin error. Okay, I put it on big screen, so now I can't see your chats. Where is the error if there is an error?
Relajada.
Relajada se observa la seguridad. Okay, relajada sounds good. Okay.
That's very weird.
Asaltar.
A asaltar. Okay.
Aprovechan a asaltar.
It should be para asaltar, I guess.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. So,
I agree. Letter C.
yes, letter C does happen to be where the error is at. And yes, it should be para asaltar. Para asaltar. Okay? I agree, Darcy, that relajada se observa la seguridad en Chetumal sounds very strange. But that's one of the reasons why I like to come to this newspaper, because for one thing, newspaper writing is just a little bit different from, I guess I'm supposed to say in English, what common conversation sounds like. Mm-hmm. And this is just an example of how flexible word order in Spanish can be. And it's a good example of the type of distractor that'll be there on the exam. So, a asaltar is a preposition question. So, para, por, para, a, en, encima, all those things. That's all that is. Relajada is just a distractor because it sounds kind of odd. What they're trying to say is the security apparatus looked to be quite relaxed in Chetumal, and so some criminals took advantage of that and robbed at gunpoint a hair salon. Which, so I love it. It's the most random vocabulary ever. All right, let's try another one. Oh, and that was the end. Read that article, but like the author goes way off into the weeds, the journalist, and starts like saying something about his opinion on the, I don't know, laws of the day. It's funny. Anyway, vinculan a proceso a Mabel Rosique Domínguez. That's the link for you. It'll be there. Okay. La acta de vinculación a proceso como probable responsable del delito de encubrimiento se dictó ayer por la tarde en contra de la tabasqueña Mabel Rosique Domínguez, de 24 años de edad, or sin error. Okay, so be looking on the screen, thinking it over. La acta de vinculación a proceso como probable responsable del delito de encubrimiento se dictó ayer por la tarde en contra de la tabasqueña Mabel Rosique Domínguez, de 24 años de edad, sin error. All right, is this another one of those sneaky ones with no error, or where is the error?
I think it's letter A.
I was going to say that too, actually.
Okay.
Vinculación a proceso como.
Okay, where's the error in letter A, if it is letter A?
Proceso.
I thought
in proceso?
acta. I thought actas were masculine.
Yeah, I did too. El acta, como el
So
acta
it's
de nacimiento.
distracting me.
Right. Right. No, you're correct. This is a question of an article use. Okay. So you do say el acta. I think acta is still feminine, like el acta larga. I'll have to check right now. But I think the reason that it's el acta is because it's like el águila, meaning that the two A's, the la and the acta slur together. The accent falls over acta, a, the first a. So you have to change it to el, like el agua. Let me double check though. Yep. It's feminine, but that it falls under those that are accented on the first A, so you have to change the article to el. So it's muchas actas, but el acta. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So read this article too, because it has a ton of really awesome legalese, Mexican legalese. So basically what it's talking about is this lady, el acta de vinculación a proceso, that's a probable cause ruling. So this is almost like a preliminary hearing was held and she was bound over because she's being considered, there's probable cause regarding whether or not she aided and abetted this dude who killed somebody. All right. Let's go on with it. El juez primero de control del Centro de Justicia Oral de Mérida consideró que la mujer no solo ayudó al probable asesino Vidal Preciado Flores deshacerse del cuerpo, sino también a que se evadiera de la acción de la justicia y limpiar el lugar de la escena del crimen, which it's interesting that they say escena del crimen when we're told to say lugar de los hechos, but I guess that's neither here nor there. Okay. El juez primero de control del Centro de Justicia Oral de Mérida consideró que la mujer no solo ayudó al probable asesino Vidal Preciado Flores deshacerse del cuerpo, sino también a que se evadiera de la acción de la justicia y limpiar el lugar de la escena del crimen.
I would say C.
Okay.
I
a
don't
que
think-
se evadiera.
Sino también a que se evadió de la acción de la justicia y limpiar. I don't know.
Okay. So it could be C. Any other thoughts?
Well, the verb deshacerse can go right after no solo ayudó. You can leave out all of the al probable, blah, 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 up until the verb. So I gotta read it. I gotta read it like that. Que la mujer no solo ayudó deshacerse. I think it's okay. Sino también a que se evadiera. No error.
Okay.
I could be wrong though.
I know. It's difficult. All right. Anybody else weigh in? I'm sorry, Maritza, I'll say I'm sorry right now if you're texting and I'm not picking it up. I can't see it. What's going on here is that the error is actually in B. So Raquel, you were on the right track. What happens is ayudó is one of those verbs in Spanish, like insistir. It always takes the N in like academic Spanish. Ayudó is going to take an A. Okay? So it's ayudó a deshacerse del cuerpo. So we're missing that A in front of deshacerse. We do have an A right here with al probable asesino. But we need two A's in this case because it's La mujer no solo ayudó al probable asesino Vidal, blah, 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 a deshacerse del cuerpo. Because the first a that is here is a personal a. It's that thing we learned back in Spanish class way back when, that when the object is alive, it has to have an a. And on top of that, when you're trying to express the notion of helping somebody to do something, you actually add another a. That's why there's an a here. So, la mujer no solo ayudó a deshacerse del cuerpo, sino también a que se evadiera de la acción de justicia. Now, Darcy, the reason that it's se evadiera is because this is one of those, oh gosh, I'm trying to figure out which category it would fall under. Maybe it's like requests, but basically we don't say deshacerse in any tense here because there's no change in subject. Mm-hmm. She got rid of the body, but then she helped fulano de tal avoid prosecution. So we change subject, and then there's that clause where in the first half she's giving a hand to some other subject, which elicits the subjunctive. Okay. So, and this is past subjunctive. So this is the context where looking when it comes up in our exercise book, we'll concentrate hard some more on this notion of the past subjunctive. Oh, good. Maritza forgives me for not seeing her comments. Alrighty, let me close this. I think we've got, one more, and then I'll let you guys go for the night. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is another hard one, which is why I really loved this article. Contra Preciado Flores pesa la orden de aprehensión como probable responsable de delito de homicidio calificado, ya que la víctima fue muerta de un balazo en la cabeza. Contra Preciado Flores pesa la orden de aprehensión como probable responsable del delito de homicidio calificado, ya que la víctima fue muerta de un balazo en la cabeza.
Sí.
Sí, I would say C2. Fue muerta does not make sense. Ya que la víctima... ya que la víctima murió de un balazo en la cabeza.
Okay. I agree. The article was written with the phrase fue muerta. So, Priscilla, did you say C or D? D as in dog.
C.
C. All right. My suspicion is that I have a colleague who's a test writer, and I think if I showed her this phrase and say, but I got it out of a newspaper, she would faint. I don't think she would like it at all. I think it could be a newer construction with journalists, because there's so much, there's such a high exchange of information these days that it could be something that, is influenced by the English passive voice construction. So I would be really surprised if this was considered correct by some of the people that currently have a stake in rating exams. But it is something that I found in Spanish, right? An Anglicism. Gracias, Raquel. That's what I think it sounds like. So I'm on board with you guys with choosing C, and I probably would on the test if I saw anything that weird. But just to throw it out there, this according to whoever wrote this crazy article, is correct. What I do like of this little portion is contra Preciado Flores pesa la orden de aprehensión como probable responsable. What I think this means is Preciado Flores is subject to a detention, to an arrest warrant, right? So I like contra fulano pesa as a way of rendering the English is subject to. So you don't have to worry about this today because our focus is the written exam. You won't have to supply anything. But down the line when you're preparing for the oral exam, this is a very pretty, eloquent way in Spanish to express that context that comes up so often, which is he or she is subject to an XYZ type of order. Okay? So keep that in mind. In the back of your mind, though, because we got a lot on our minds. All right, everybody. I will take some time to go through the English grammar exam for attorneys, and we'll tease out why those answers are what they are. I'll keep looking for more grammar stuff like this so we can keep muddling through this type of error detection. It's difficult, but practice makes perfect. So we'll just keep at it. All right. This week, as questions, frustrations, concerns, worries come up, stay in touch with me. A big part of my job is helping you guys stay encouraged, because this is a very grueling process.
I have one question, Kelly, before you get off.
Yes.
I noticed I took the exam on Paradigm, the one you get for free.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took that, and then I paid for the University of Arizona, how it provides those
Mm-hmm.
two exams. I found the University of Arizona exams much harder than the Paradigm test.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Has anyone else noticed that?
I remember feeling the same way. I don't remember. I mean, I think there's at least 10 copies of the written exam. Mm-hmm. And no matter how magically they've balanced this exam to make it statistically reliable, there at the end of the day is just what one individual knows and what one individual doesn't know. So it could be that a particular exam copy seems more difficult to you because it just contains stuff you don't know, mm-hmm. while another equally as valid exam is easier to you because it does contain stuff you do know. There's statistics, and then there's just that individual factor. So I think that the practice exam that's available right now by Paradigm is the practice exam that has been available for the past decade. Mm-hmm. I don't think they rewrote the practice exam in any way. That's the one that's been approved as the practice exam. But I think it behooves all of us to plan for the actual exam being tougher than what that practice exam on their website shows. So I think it's smart to prepare for a test that feels a little bit more like Arizona's copies. Be ready for that, and hope for a practice exam that feels a little bit, or an actual exam that feels a little bit more like the practice exam.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for spending another night here.
Bye.
We'll talk in a week.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Adios.